Hello, Numeratus community. It's John Conrad here. I'm here with Leanne Mason and Jim Scolini, and we're going to talk about the employee versus employer mindset, and of course, taking the dive from becoming an employer with growing into being an employee, based out of schooling, or a certain path that we were on. So, Leanne, I wanted to start with you today in regards to your experiences taking the leap from leaving a job. You don't have to get into specifics, but being an employee somewhere, and then, of course, taking the leap forward into becoming your own business owner.
Sure. Well, I think the big thing for me was that income ceiling is that, you stay with the employer and, you can get bonuses, you can get commissions, you can make all types of money. But really, when you go out on your own, you've got more opportunity to make a lot more and save more time. You've got time restrictions as well. Whereas when you have your own business, there's just a lot more time to do the things that you really do want to do.
Jim, how about your experiences?
As an employee, I was a glutton for punishment. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know what I did know. So I was an analyst for a good 17 years. I never got promoted, but I always did all the work. And I always worked at a company for at least 5 years. And departments always shrunk. I always, took on some other analyst's work and didn't get anything for it and never spoke up. And now it's, the company did not show me the loyalty that I showed them. So why would I need that? Now I do it for myself. And the sky is the limit, like Leanne said. There's no limit here.
Would agree with that. And to really hone in on both of your stories, is that we were under someone's management. Someone was managing us. Someone was managing our growth in the department, the tasks that we were able to do, what the mission was for that given month or week or even day. So someone was always overseeing what we were doing, and then also overseeing our growth if we were going to leave that department or climb, the corporate ladder, if you will. You had to play office politics. You had to do certain compliance videos and things of this nature. You had to play ball with everyone else in that group or environment. So even if it's a specific sub department within a larger corporation, you always had to mend well with your peers. And to me, I had no problem working with teams, but you're always under someone's thumb and under someone's management. And I always like to start to create new things within my department, trying to make things a little bit better, more efficient. But there also came a point where people didn't like that. So I had a problem with that, and I usually left those companies. But now, no longer being an employee and being an employer, I'm not under someone's thumb anymore. I'm creating things. I'm making things more efficient, not only for my business, but from my joint team here, but also for our clients. That now it's enjoyable because you get to see the fruits of your labor and watch things actually come about in real time without having someone to be like, oh, I wouldn't do it that way. Well, it's like, those individuals who said that we couldn't do those things, they didn't really have that creative power either because they were under someone else's thumb. So it's only being passed down, through generations of growth in these companies that they just want to make sure that there's the hierarchy, the structure, and you don't, do anything out of the status quo. So yeah.
One of the big things I think with my time as an employee was that a lot of people feel threatened by you. So, you're paid to do a certain job, you want to see improvement in the business that you work for, but people feel threatened and they want to hold you back. They want to be the ones to do the big achievements, and then you'll get a boss who wants to take credit for what you're doing. And that, it just does something to your soul. It's like, what, I'm the one that's doing the work. Why am I not doing the credit? And why can't I make the money that they're making? I can do the same, if not better, than what they're doing. That's what they hire me to do, is to do improvements. And, that was a big reason why I moved on. I couldn't deal with, I'll just say it, the incompetency of my employer. Just putting it out there. And it happens to everyone. You'll see them do things that you don't agree with, and you're like, well, you know what? Well, why on earth am I staying here when I can go out and do the same thing? And not only that, I can provide a way better service to my clients the way I want to do it, not being restricted. Well, you've got to do something within an hour's time, whereas I can go out and see a client now. I can give them that nurturing that they need, that they want. I mean, when I left, and I had some clients of mine, they just loved the fact that I would go out of my way to drive to them and see them. It's providing the extra little bit that they want, whereas other times you're restricted. So there's so many reasons why you would go from being an employee to having your own business. I mean, that's just one of them.
Yeah. I was going to say something similar. If, as a manager, right, and managing a few analysts, what I realized is if you want to be promoted, you need to first be eager to take a task on, learn the task, do the task, document the task, and then you can hand it off to someone else and you can go learn something new. That is the same thing an entrepreneur is doing, right? I have to learn it. I have to document it so that when I come back to it, I'm familiar with it again. So I might as well do it for myself and add it to my tool belt. I'm doing it at a company. If you were to do what I just explained, it is still up to the manager or the manager's manager to decide if you get promoted. It's still not in your hands unless you're an entrepreneur. Then it's, again,
then you can promote yourself.
Yeah. Add the skill to your tool belt, and that adds value. And you will use it again.
That's the incentive, right? So if we were staying, the whole notion of the 40-hour work week, we know, is an illusion. So the more that we were working, were we getting that pay, in correspondence and the amount of energy that we were putting out? No, absolutely not. But we needed to do that. We wanted to, play ball. We wanted to grow. We had to do the same amount of time, if not effort, as our predecessors. Being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, you're the administrator, you're the executor, you are the one making the decision. So yes, you're doing all those things. You're putting that, and if you're already doing all those things and you're not getting the result that you expect, why be here? They don't want you questioning that. They don't want you to inspire, yourself and others, because, when I was leaving one company, I started to ask a lot of questions, and then I was getting ready to leave, and then they wanted to muzzle me. They didn't want me to have conversations and one-on-ones with individuals because I became a threat to that status quo. But because there was a way out. But of course, I wasn't sitting there trying to cause any trouble, because that's unprofessional. So let's talk about that barrier. So we know you have your employees over here, this garden, if you will, where we all grew in and we all had our experiences in our careers. And then there's this barrier to get to the other side. So clearly we know that there's going to be costs associated with creating your business. But is there any other, pretty obvious barriers to jumping over to the other side, Jim?
Savings account, right? You need something to lean on, right, to carry you through when you're not profitable. Did I miss the point?
No, we're just trying to scry and figure out what those barriers would be. I mean, I have some, but I don't want to share them without talking first.
I mean, yeah, other than that, I would say anxiety, right? You're going to be worried that you fail. And there's plenty of information out there to explain how to fail upward. That's still anxiety inducing.
Leanne?
Well, I think growing up I think when I was coming out of high school, I had the mindset that we're all supposed to have a job. We're all supposed to work 40 hours. There was no real nurturing of, you can do better than this. You can be a business. You don't have to be an employee. So growing up, I was always of that mindset. So first thing I did was I got a job. I worked 40 hours. And it wasn't till I got older that I realized that, no, I can be a business owner. I can do the same thing. So, there was that, like I said, the mindset of being held back. And, there's so many reasons, when you think about being a business owner, you've got costs involved. So, normally when you've got a 40-hour work week, you know that you're going to get a guaranteed paycheck. Well, when you're in a business, there's no guarantee to anything at all. So from what Jim was saying, you've got to have cash behind you to start off with. We still need to eat, drink. We still have bills to pay. So you've got to have that kind of financial backing behind you. Certain levels there are, depending on what kind of business you have. So, if you're a contractor doing what we do, there's not necessarily a huge cost outlay because really the service we provide is our time. So, but if you were to do a restaurant or something like that, you've got a lot of things to take into account: the building, the equipment, your goods that you're selling as well. So a big hurdle is financial. And again, like I said, the mindset, you've got to kind of shut yourself off to what was and come to here and say, okay, well, hang on, no, I can jump this, I can do it. There's going to be hurdles, but it's not for everyone. So some people are more geared towards being an employee, and some people have that mindset of, I can move forward, I can move over these things, I can do better for myself. So, I believe that it's not for everyone.
I agree with that. And just to touch on what both of you were saying, I mean, yes, clearly you need to have the financial backing. You need to have a reserve in place before you take these risks. These are calculated risks that you're taking. It's a bet. And Jim, I know that you've done some content about creating a treasury and having your cash grow for you. So it's one thing to have that reserve, but it's another thing to have that grow. And Leanne, I know that you've been focusing on some business structure content and getting the structure in place because well, I want to go into business. Well, how do you want it structured? Are you just a sole proprietor with Schedule C? Do you create your own LLC? Do you have employees? Or are you going to file as an S corp? Are you going to take a salary? Have you even thought of these things? So there's this anxiety of taking that jump because you're going into the unknown. If everyone knew.
Yeah. So I just wanted to jump in there while we were talking about it. Is we've all talked about anxiety and the mindset and just the emotional feelings that you have about going into business, but it is scary, and I'm not going to hide that. It really is scary. I'll give you an example. I just had a client come to me and say, I wanted to set up an electrical contracting business with someone that I am not related to. I just know them through work. So they had the entrepreneurial mindset. They wanted to go out and do their own business. Okay, that's fine. I've got nothing against that. But there's hurdles. Like, for an example, a partnership is not necessarily the best idea with someone who you don't know. And then they're wanting to say, okay, well, how do I set it up? Well, you really need to go and see an attorney to set up a partnership agreement. Oh, but we want to save money, so we're going to use AI to do the partnership agreement. I lost my mind. I said, okay, I'm going to give you some advice. And if you really think this is something you want to do, definitely get the right legal advice. Just like you would come to New Aratus and get the right financial advice. Well, he was gung-ho, and a week later I get a phone call saying, so how do I dissolve the partnership? And he knew that I gave him the right advice. I won't go into detail exactly what it was, but the gist of it was that he had a disagreement with his partner's wife. So, this is another headache. This is another thing that you need to think of when you set up a business. There's great advantages, but there's also big disadvantages. And these are things that you've got to think through with a professional like us here at Numeratus to work that through, because it's not as easy as just doing your work and not thinking about the tax consequences. There's so many things to go through with it. But don't let that deter you from being a business owner. I'd rather be upfront and honest with you so that you know what you're getting into.
Sure. And like, just to circle back, if we knew what we were getting ourselves into, wouldn't there be more individuals that weren't employees? But because we don't know that, because we have that anxiety, and you have those questions, and you have those clients that are gung ho, well, thanks for your feedback, but now I'm going to go off in this direction, even though you were like, I wouldn't do that. And then they come back, and then you have to go through everything all over again. So you're cultivating that experience of like, I've gone down this road before. Here's a warning. You have that knowledge, you have that wisdom to help point your clients in a certain direction. So it's, of course, you're coming from the employee mindset over to the employer. Well, what do you know? Well, you need to learn. You need to practice, right? You need to go out there and you need to get clients. You need to serve others, and you need to provide that feedback, provide those tasks, and learn and have that education behind you. But what does that mean? How do I get that? Well, I need time. And if I'm an employee and I'm working 40 hours a week, no, I'm working 60, 70 hours a week. And then I get home late from the commute and I have dinner. The next thing you know, I'm tired. And then next thing you know, I did that the next day. And then a year goes by. Did I really grow in the area that I wanted to? No. But now, taking that leave, now it's just us. It's just us, and now we have the time. So we need to put that time in order to grow our services and to grow ourselves and to learn and cultivate that knowledge. But then at the same time, if we have our clients coming in, they expect there to be sufficient turnaround time with their projects. So they're coming here, they're coming to Numeratus to make sure that their tasks are being completed in a steadfast manner. And that's the best thing that we can offer anyone, is that, they have that anxiety, they have those questions. So, what, we're here with a metaphysical extinguisher, if you will, and we're here to make sure that there's no questions anymore and they have a clear path moving forward. And that's the best thing that we could offer to our clients and to even someone who's inspired to start to take that leap from an employee to an employer, that it's really honing in on that time and learning and having those questions and focusing on cultivating that reserve and looking at the business structure. But then it comes down to, well, now I have all that set up. Now what? Well, it comes down to what you want to do. Have you ever thought enough about having a dream, about, trying to serve others? And then, of course, yes, that's how you cultivate your own clients in return. But if you're bogged down with the day-to-day, the time, you're too busy focused on the tasks of the employee-employer relationship, you don't have that time to set up a lifeboat to maybe even take the dive. So I view time as the biggest barrier for you to do anything outside of work for someone else. But once you start to take your time back, make that time, then you start to share that with others. So Jim, question for you, and then I'll pass this over to Leanne. Now, being here with Numeratus, being over on the other side, what is that value proposition that you want to convey to your clients and even your clients here at Numeratus? Just curious.
I would say my value proposition is making your money work for you, investing in the right places, and taking control of the chaos. Right? I mean, running a business, just the financial side of it, right? With the cash, getting control over that, getting an understanding of it, like this, having control over it, provides peace of mind and helps you sleep at night. That would be my value proposition.
Yeah.
So I would say mine would be, coming from a tax perspective, it's great to have the money. It's, we work to make things better for our lives, but, Uncle Sam's always going to be on the other side and he's always going to want his cut. So, you've just got to make sure, just like the money works for you, we need to make sure that on your tax return it works for you. And one of the things that is really important that people don't normally realize is when you're an employee, you have a W-2, and for the most part, if you're single, things pretty much pan out even for the most part. But when you have a business, then you start looking at self-employment tax and other issues as well. And so, your first year, you may be in a loss situation, but as you go on, you're going to, the whole point is to make a profit. Well, we need to be there behind you coming in and saying, okay, well, it's 6 months. Where are we at? Do we have a profit that we need to do something with, to reduce our taxes? So there's value in having someone alongside you who knows about taxes and how to, the last thing you want to do is give your money to the IRS. We want to pocket that money and use that to build our business, to build our futures. So, there's definitely value in using someone who's got experience. And the point is that you pay us for the advice. And just going back to my client, if you don't take our advice, there's not really much we can do. You've got to really grab onto what we tell you and run with that. And obviously we're here with any questions or concerns, or you might not understand why we've gone down a certain path, but that's why we're here. That's the value that you have in at least my side, the tax side.
Yeah, certainly cultivating that trust. I mean, it's one thing if you start asking the AI some questions and then you get some feedback, but talking to a human being and understanding their experiences certainly cultivates, that growth there, not only in the professional relationship, but also I trust you enough to be told that I might be going down the wrong path. So from my perspective, that one barrier with the time is also the greatest value proposition that we could serve here at Numeratus. So not necessarily the fact of I don't have any time, but if we were able to extinguish all those worries and give you that time back, then we're unlocking your potential. We're unlocking the creative power that was pushed down or not even regarded in the old way in being an employee. And now you can do whatever you want within limits, of course, within the law, but you're the captain of your ship. You're in control of your own destiny and the destiny of your family. So you're there growing your business. You're in the helm. You're making time. You're making value, and you're sharing that. And I think that that's the greatest value proposition that we could offer, is that it's a completely different lifestyle going this way. There's risks. Yes, there's always going to be risks. But the growth and the ability to help others and to serve your clients, and it doesn't matter if you're creating widgets or you're running an accounting firm. You're here to help others grow because you've done it yourself. That's the value. They're coming to you because you've done it yourself. You have that experience. You have that knowledge. And if we're not saving them time, then what was the sense of even going into business? Might as well go back where I was and just kind of wait for an annual bonus. So, just to bring this all together, I would say that we're all leaning towards taking the dive, but don't just do it willy-nilly. You have to have a plan. You have to think these things through. It's not just about having, some wishes, but it's about having a detailed goal and then moving gradually in that direction. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, but you know what? You're growing and you're moving into a place that's unfamiliar and unknown, and it's uncomfortable, and there might be some anxiety, but you know what? You're growing out of prior limits. And with that, I want to thank Leanne. I want to thank Jim. And till next time, Numeratus community, we'll talk later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You can count on us.